Well, you magnificent bastards, some weird government regulations are tripping us up again, but in my search for the next cheers-worthy legend, I came across an unlikely inspiration to our latest challenge. One of the many things that we're developing at the Tribe's Distillery in Austin is a space to feature local food and drink in addition to our own spirits and cocktails.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Now wine, super easy, but our plan to source and highlight the amazing beer makers in our area has run into an issue. We can only source uncarbonated beer from breweries. Why? Because most laws in this industry are unnecessary, short-sighted, and f***ing stupid. Long story short, it triggers an excise tax whenever we try to source beer from a brewery and it's carbonated. And now the brewery's in a situation where they have to keep additional records and they have to change their process in order for us to get a few kegs, and it quickly makes the whole thing fall apart. But whining is for keyboard warriors. We just need to consider who else has taken on an empire of bureaucracy and constraints and navigated their way to a solution. I'm gonna get on the Googles, type in historical beer quotes, and just start scrolling, see what we come up with, and you find a delightful little quote attributed to Benjamin Franklin. Beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. Nice. Franklin helped wrestle our country free from the British Empire, and he had a legendary ability to distill complex problems down to their essence and address them with simplicity and practicality. From his scientific inquiries to negotiations with world powers, his philosophical writings, and practical inventions, and I wonder what practical inspiration we can get from the face of the $100 bill, because finding a viable path through a government bureaucracy is complicated. I want to know what Benjamin Franklin would do. So I invited over the biggest Benjamin Franklin fan I know, the man, the myth, the legend, the Schwood. Brian freaking Brushwood.
Hello, Rex freaking Williams.
All right, so wait, if you've been watching us a minute, you know that Brian has been instrumental in the establishing of the Whiskey Tribe. He got us a huge head start.
Well, thank you. You will be receiving a bill very soon.
How about I just pour you some free beer?
I'm down for that.
Okay, one of the most inspirational, influential historical figures in your life. Who did you say?
So I said Benjamin Franklin, but mostly it's because, are we allowed to curse?
Of course.
What a f***ing badass he was. He only had 2 years of formal education.
Yeah.
But he was kind of like an early internet style pioneer where all of a sudden he had a platform, and late at night when nobody was looking, he would print off his own newsletters.
Yeah.
Under the name Silence Do-Good. But then he goes on to invent a whole bunch of shit. What are we having right now?
Okay, this is Old Rasputin. It looks like it's kind of the era of Benjamin Franklin. It's old-timey, but Old Rasputin, wildly popular in beer circles, stout aged in bourbon barrels.
You can pick up some of that tang in there. There's a quote that people say is like, beer is proof that God wants to make us happy.
Right.
Technically, it was about wine.
Yeah.
But the spirit remains.
Yeah. He's considered a founding father. He was never president.
He just made so much money that he was like, I'm gonna go to France.
Yeah.
And then he goes to France and just dresses American AF. He creates a fashion trend in France.
Oh, no shit.
But you want to know my favorite thing?
Yeah.
Would you like to hear the best advice he's ever written?
Sure, yeah.
This is titled, Advice to a Young Man on the Choice of a Mistress, June 25th, 1745. Consider preferring old women to young ones for the following reasons. Number 1, they have more knowledge of the world. They're smarter. When women cease to be handsome, they study to be good. So covering all the above with a basket.
He said put a bag on her head.
And in the dark, all cats are gray. And lastly, they are so grateful. Benjamin Franklin on a $100 bill.
All right, that wasn't helpful at all. And the Googled quote wasn't even about beer, it was about wine. But if I had to sum up Benjamin Franklin in a few words, I think distilled wisdom or inspired simplicity. So what would he do? A government behemoth, dumb laws. What happens when we boil the challenge down to its essence? What do we need? What's our goal? Good beer. What's the problem? We can't source uncarbonated beer without giving breweries a bureaucratic headache. Is there another way for Crowded Barrel to have good beer? Well, if you can't buy it, you can make it.
We're whiskey makers. We have to make beer first before we make whiskey anyways.
Yes.
So we're gonna start making our own beer?
Yep.
We should just make extra beer and sell it at Crowded Barrel while our stills are producing whiskey. And a lot of people don't realize how interconnected beer brewing and whiskey distilling are. In the world of spirits, every drop of whiskey begins with the crafting of a simpler yet profoundly significant beverage, beer. I often get very, very jealous of breweries because they can make a product whenever they need it and then immediately bottle it and sell it, which is cool. But with whiskey, you're gonna make something and then it's gonna sit on a shelf for years. But there is one part of brewing that I have never been jealous of.
Lots of cleaning. The chiller, the pump, all the hoses, and then I'm gonna take those fermenters over and get those cleaned up as well.
So what proportion of your time is spent cleaning versus actually brewing?
I would say 90% of the time because you're cleaning while things are going.
What happens to the quality of the beer if it's going through the equipment and whatnot and it's picking up unwanted bacteria?
That's gonna make your beer sour. That could add some really weird off stuff like burnt tire.
Do you know who is surprisingly the most neurotic person on our team about cleaning? Heaven forbid you don't use a coaster or you don't rinse out your coffee cup, because she will come at you with these little piercing So making a good beer is a critical skill in making good whiskey. It all starts with these little barley grains. They're soaked, sprouted, and roasted to just the right color. This isn't just about prepping the grains. It's about setting the flavor foundation. Over here in the mash tun, we mix prepped barley with water, and this mix is called wort. It's where the sugars get ready for fermentation.
I just want to keep it between about 148 and 152 is a nice range. Lower than that, there'll be more simple sugars in the beer, and the beer could come out too thin. Higher than that, maybe maltier than you want, or lower ABV than you want.
The quality of your wort sets the stage for the quality of your whiskey. No good beer, no good whiskey. All right, Kyle, so we got the grains all hot and bothered here, and then we drained out the liquid. You can see all the spent grains in here. It's sweet, but there's one meaningful difference between whiskey making and beer making. Before you add the yeast and get the fermentation to turn it into the wash, you boil it.
Yeah, you start the boil. There's some chemicals that you want to drive off through the boil that can show up in beer. You're boiling it and adding your hops to achieve your specific bitterness level for the style, and if you want to add those hop flavors and aromas.
Okay,
the hops
so
go in the boil.
Real quick, if you're wondering about whether or not there's such a thing as a hopped whiskey, yes, it's super rare, usually because hops and whiskey notes don't really play well together. All right, which one's this?
This is Citra brand, great for IPAs and pales.
Yeah, that alpha 14.2%. What's the difference? Like, what does that mean?
The alpha acids is what's going to add to bitterness. So the higher the alpha acids, the less hops you might want to use so you don't over bitter it.
Oh, dude, I just want to smell bags of hops.
5 minutes left in the boil of another hop addition. That'll be a lot of flavor and aroma in the hops.
Oh, so how many stages? 3 stages?
4 hop additions.
4 stages. After the boiling in the hops, that's when you throw in the yeast and you have either a beer, if you did the boiling in the hops, or if you didn't do that, you have a wash. And that wash/beer goes into a still, and then that's where you're gonna get that spirit that turns into whiskey. In whiskey making, the quote-unquote the beer, that wash/beer, is whiskey making generally a really narrow scope of beer that's going into the still?
There's a lot less styles, and there's kind of stick to more traditional, well-known styles like your bourbon with your corn mashes, your malts. But all you're really doing in most of the whiskey part is just changing those percentages. Sometimes you'll see an occasional thing where people will use like a sorghum or buckwheat or oats and do fun stuff with it, but the traditional recipes everyone knows.
You know, we're coloring outside the lines of whiskey. What if we did beer styles going into a still that doesn't really have a whiskey category, but it definitely has a beer category?
Yeah, I think there's something there. Like I think what Andalusia is doing, they have some recipes that are kind of vaguely based on like a brown ale or a stout, and they turn out really good.
When it comes to beer making and whiskey making, is this where you have to get really finicky and precise?
Yes, because you're gonna taste every little difference.
I think that's one of the more interesting things we can start exploring with the whiskey quests in Patreon. This part of whiskey making, you know, this sounds like a small thing at the beginning, but that trajectory is gonna make a big difference over time, especially whenever you're aging something in a barrel.
That 10% difference will be very obvious A-Bing. Everything is gonna show up. The water profile, the grains, the hops, the fermentation health. There's a ton of stuff that could go wrong, and a lot of tweaks you could make to improve the beer as well. And then 3 years down the road, we'll be like, why did we do this? Or Why didn't we make more of that?
Yeah. Either way, in a few years, we're going to be very annoyed with ourselves.
This episode is sponsored by Helix.
So Helix Sleep, these are premium mattresses custom fit to your needs.
Premium.
Conveniently shipped to your door.
To your door.
We've both been using Helix Matri, that's the plural of mattresses. And the thing to make sure that you're gonna get good sleep is you need to be basically on a mattress that's the right mattress for you. So the first thing that Helix does is they're gonna take you through a sleep quiz. You're gonna go through the sleep quiz that's gonna ask you a series of simple questions like your size, you prefer a side sleeping bag. I'm a side sleeper.
I'm majority a side sleeper.
And then it's gonna narrow it down based on your preferences. You're gonna get this mattress, how conveniently is this?
Let me tell you. It shows up at your front door and it's inside of a box. You pull it out of a box and then you shake it out. Big burrito plops down, huge. You slice her open and immediately it starts to go a little something like this.
Get away. Why are you following me? Just stay. I don't need you. This is unnecessary. Oh God. Was that necessary?
It didn't even. Whoom.
Oh my God, you're right.
So you know it's good quality because they're going to give you a 10-year warranty, and you have several different financing options to make sure it's going to be a good fit for not only your sleeping needs, but also your budget needs.
And you have a 100-night sleep trial.
100 nights to figure it out to make sure it's the right one for you because getting good sleep is so important. So make sure you get the right mattress. So the Magnificent Bastards, they're going to try out the Helix Sleep for themselves. Where are you going?
You're going to helixsleep.com/whiskey for 20% off your mattress, plus 2 free pillows.
And thinking about it, there's one key advantage that we have as a crowdsourced distillery with the experiments that we're doing with the Magnificent Bastards and Whiskey Quests. Barrel-aged beer. It's one of the most popular things happening in beer right now, and we are uniquely positioned to do that in a really interesting way.
All right, Kyle, what do you have for me today?
This is the 2014 Bourbon County Brand Stout. Back in the mid-90s, they had a dinner with, I think, some of the people from Jim Beam, and apparently they would dump their bourbon barrels, put spring water in it, roll it around, dump it out, and put it in glasses with ice as like end of the day drink.
Interesting.
So I guess he thought like, well, could I put beer in there? Barrel-aged beer.
Oh, dang, that's dark.
Yeah, these are, from what I could tell, the first guys that ever did that.
Wow. Okay.
Stout is kind of the best thing to do.
For aging?
Little rough, little acrid from the roasted malts. This totally rounds all that out.
Dude, this is so
And then
good.
add in all those whiskey flavors.
It's very creamy.
Now this is pretty old. This is 10 years old. These can age pretty well, but they do eventually hit a point to where they kind of start downgrading. But some hold up for quite a long time.
Is stout the best type of beer to age in a barrel?
A barley wine and a strong ale. Those age really well in bourbon barrels as well.
I'm so excited. Making barrel-aged stouts? Get out of here. So what is our first project? What are we first working on?
Getting some core beer in, so I'm starting with a Citra Smash Pale Ale and a Kolsch style.
All of these beers that we're going to be making, where would people go to do that?
We'll put some polls up or some place for comments on patreon.com/whiskeytribe.
It's legal. What we're doing is it's very illegal.
Fully legal.
It's fully illegal.
Fully legal.
So it's fine.
Fully legal.
So we've been using our small scale equipment for these pilot batches, the prototypes for, the mash bills and whatnot. But yeah, here, you'll see. What capacity, what volume, what production pipeline do we have for just crowded barrel beer, full efficiency? How much beer can we make?
With that, plus a big boil kettle in the next room over,
Yeah.
then easily 100 to 200 gallons per brew. So that's our hot liquor tank. That's where we heat up all our water.
Yeah.
But instead of filling this up first and then dumping the grain in, the grain comes in through a grain mill, have it augered up and dropped directly into this hopper. And while it's going in this hopper, we could feed that hot water into this little setup, mixes the grain and the water, no dough ball effect. And then as soon as everything's in, cool, you're mashing.
One final piece.
Electricity.
Thousands of dollars worth of electrician work. How expensive is it?
More than 10, less than 20.
Oh God. Benjamin Franklin was the kind of guy that could turn a crisis into an opportunity. In more than 200 years after his legendary life, Ben Franklin helped inspire a simple solution to a complicated piece of modern bullshit. When it's easier for us to get an excellent tequila from Mexico than a keg of beer from down the street, something ain't right. And this is Crowded Barrel's brand new Tequila Snakebite. We wanted an authentic tequila for the tasting room, and after searching for a couple of years, we finally found an incredible, authentic tequila that we're happy to source and experiment with at Crowded Barrel. The Tequila Blanco was distilled at the award-winning Gnome 1414 in Jalisco. With that base, we aged a glorious reposado and even pioneered an Amburana finished tequila. You got 80 proof, 100 proof, 100 proof, which is surprisingly rare in tequila. Obviously, whiskey will always be our first love, but if you like tequila, this is the good stuff. The link to our Saturday, May 4th release party for Snakebite is in the description. Tickets are limited, so grab yours now for a Cuatro de Mayo full of tacos and tequilas. It's not Cinco de Mayo. That would have made more sense, but it's illegal for distilleries to sell bottles on Sundays. Save me, Ben Franklin. Save us all.